Good night. It's the 20th of September 2022. You're very welcome back. The weather's extremely good. Um, the few new subscribers that have come on board, you're very welcome. Hope we can hope you'll be happy and suitably entertained. Um, this my channel, for those who are new to it, is a variety of things. It's not just politics and all this giving out and all that. This is about vintage and the workshop and stuff like that. So a lot of people are into vintage, repairing vintage, and even doing ordinary work and various things to do with metal and all of that. So this is vintage number 4, and it's on acetylene. And the chemical number for acetylene is C2H2, carbon 2, hydrogen 2. Now, while acetylene in modern day and age is made from oil and gas products in many places, it's still, I'd say at least half of it is still made from calcium carbide. And every person who is a pensioner will remember at some stage carbide, we called it. It was always known as carbide. And there were carbide lamps and all of that stuff. And indeed it was a source of street lighting. It was made in acetylene generators using water. So this is the calcium carbide. And the reason I mention it is it's CaC2, so it's carbon and calcium. When acetylene gas is used with pure oxygen, it gives the highest heat of anything in existence. Nothing else will give the same heat intensity, and it will actually allow you to weld steel. There's no other mix will allow you to actually use a steel rod as a filler. Now you can come very close to that with some modern gases, but none are quite as good. Acetylene oxygen is a superior product for everything, even for jewellery making. They use it. Now it's lighter than air, which means that in ships and in buildings it goes up, and this means that it does not assemble on the floor. This is very important, particularly in ships, because if a valve was left open and the gas went down through the ship and there was a spark, it could blow the whole thing up. So acetylene rises up, and this is a big thing. The other thing we might be able to show in a demonstration is that it's carburizing. Now, when you're brazing, you have a problem with oxygen getting on the metal, and you have to use a flux. But when you have a carburizing flame, it tends to shut out the oxygen and makes it easier for welding and brazing. So while there are great efforts to phase out acetylene, it's still a favourite, and indeed it's one of my favourite gases for doing workshop work with. Now it's also used in UPVC plastics such as windows to make it, and would you believe it is pumped into glass houses to ripen fruit. Some say that it's not healthy to use it for fruit ripening, but certainly it's not an unhealthy gas at all. Now what I have here is I have a piece of carbide, just a little carbide, and it's I got it a long time ago from Minerals Water Company in the UK, and they're one of the few people still supplying it. It's expensive. It's said to be still used in cave lamps. I would have thought that electric lamps would be used, but to say they still use it and all that. So I'm going to try and show it to you here now. With this, I mightn't be able. This is the dust here of it, and then there's a hard piece here. Do you see the hard piece here? So there's the dust. Now, what I'm going to do is when it's mixed with water, it gives off a gas, and a lot of youngsters even, I don't think they have it now. It's so hard to get, and it's so expensive that they don't play with it. But long ago they would play with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a wee piece here, and I'm not putting the solid piece yet. And I'll put in the solid piece if you don't mind. I'll just put in the solid piece. That's the solid piece in. I'll put in a bit of this. And the very minute it goes in, this is the powder. The very minute it goes in, you get it giving off acetylene gas. And I have a fixture here where the pipe is put through water just to keep it cool. Now hopefully it's going to light. Not just yet, it'll take it a minute. Now, it just had to put a bit extra in there and when we light it here, we see that we get a very intense flame. Now what's happening here, folks, is I put in a little extra stuff into it, calcium carbide, and that goes up the pipe. The idea of this water jar here is simply to not let the nozzle get too hot. So you can see it there, it just keeps it from getting too hot. Now one of the things about acetylene is that it burns with a very, very bright flame. It's very white, and if you look at it for a while, you'll begin to see a kind of a green in your eyes. It was used as lamps. Now, so that's one of the things about it. Now, another little thing about it is that, and it's not that easy showing here, but it's carburizing. So if I put a paper over it, you see the soot. See the soot? Look at the soot. So what you have to do when you're burning this industrially, you have to add oxygen until you get it. You have to add oxygen until you get it a balance. You have to get a balance for the oxygen until you get it either a neutral flame, and any of the juicer will know how to do this, or a slightly carburizing flame. And what you've seen there is an extremely carburizing flame. I mean, it's just so, you see the soot coming there, you can see it there on that. So if you hold this overhead here, you'll see the soot there. It's just black soot there. And I don't know, does it wipe off? We'll soon see. Now, that's the test done. I'm glad that worked out. And it's bubbling away here in the bottle. And when it came out first, they didn't have a way of storing it. They made generators along the streets. So the local authorities would have an acetylene generator, and they had those were gas lamps. Now there was coal gas as well, but acetylene was very, very common as a light. And I'm just going to turn off the light here now. I have to be very careful not to. Now, there you are now with the light off. And you can see that it's quite bright. It's a very beautiful light actually, and you can see that there. So right. So that's that little bit done. So I can go on to talk about it now. It will probably burn out, or maybe I hope there's no disaster and my system works. But just to explain it again, I put calcium carbide into the bottle. I have a cork in the bottle, I have a pipe coming around, and I have the pipe going through water so that the nozzle doesn't get too hot. That's all it is. It will still burn without the water if you and it's quite a good flame, but it is an unusual gas in that it's created by the action of water on calcium carbide, but it can be made nowadays out of oil and other products. Now, while that's burning away, I'll just say that for industrial and welding and cutting, this acetylene will cut steel with oxygen, and propane will do something similar, but it's not as good. This is agreed to be the best of all fuels because of this high carbon content. That's it. And I think I've showed you that now adequately. And just again, I mightn't have this set up again, so I'll just get an old piece of paper here and show it to you again. Just look at the amount of carbon. Okay. Now, so I made the point there. Now the thing about it is, you had to generate it yourself, and there were acetylene generators, and you'll see them online. That I tried making one time, but it wasn't. I didn't get it finished. It's a project that has to be done yet. But thankfully, it can now be stored in a cylinder. Now it differs from all other gases in that all other gases like propane, all of the MAPS gases, polypropylene, butane, all of those gases for burning, they can be just compressed into the cylinder, full stop. Compressed, full stop. Now, the amount of calcium carbon in this, it's about a half an egg stand, and there's a little bit of a solid bit in it as well. But in any event, it can be, ordinary gas can be compressed into a cylinder, no bother. But if you take this gas and increase the pressure above 15 pounds per square inch above its pressure, it'll explode. It can explode. So essentially, if you have it there at atmospheric pressure, which is 14.5 pounds per square inch, and you suddenly compress it to put it into a cylinder, it'll burst. It'll blow up. So you can't do that. Now, as far as I understand, what you can do is you can you can you can increase the pressure by about 12 pounds per square inch in stages. So you can go 12, then leave it, and then 12 more, and 12 until you get to 48, and on up like that. You can gradually increase it. You cannot increase it uh, by double. You couldn't increase it from naught, we'll say, or from atmospheric pressure to 50 pounds per square inch. It would burst. You cannot do it. It's highly dangerous. Now, so how do they manage it? Well, they take advantage of the fact that this gas can be dissolved in acetone. And there is another industrial gas they use now too, but it's nearly all acetone. And 1 kilo, sorry, one unit of acetylene gas can be 1 unit of acetone, liquid acetone, that's nail varnish remover, can absorb 250 times its own volume in acetylene. So if this was a jar full of acetone, you could put into this jar another 250 times that in acetylene. That is a most amazing thing. There's another very, very long-winded name of a chemical that can happen to, but acetone, ordinary nail varnish remover. And you can pump it in. Once you only pump it in at about 12 pounds in stages until you have this under pressure, and you can bring it up to about 300 bar. You can bring it up to very high pressure, 300 pounds per square inch anyway, up to a high pressure, provided you do it in stages under controlled conditions. If you try to do it at home, you'd have a disaster. You'd probably burst the cylinder. So essentially, they take advantage of the fact that acetylene gas can be dissolved in acetone at up to 250 times its own volume. That is unbelievable that can happen. Now, even at that, you just can't pump acetylene into a jar of acetone. You have to have a special inside on the cylinder. You have to have a special stuff inside it. It has to be like a honeycomb. If you ever seen what do you call that, Honeycrisp bar of chocolate, or you need some beehive stuff, you'll see that there are little gaps, little air holes inside it, like a honeycomb, or like, as I said, a bar of that Aero chocolate with the yellow inside it. That's what has to be put in it. It used to be asbestos. They're not allowing that now, but there's other materials. And if you cut open an acetylene cylinder, you'd find inside it a real hard, porous substance. So the acetone is brought up, we'll say, into the cylinder till it's about this height, and then it's filled with acetylene, which goes down through the porous material and absorbs in the acetone. And that then becomes very highly pressurized, pressurized, and it's an ideal way to store it, because the acetylene cannot get out of the acetone because it's in little compartments. It's stored in very small compartments. It's stored inside in very small compartments. If I give this a shake, you'll probably get a bit more. It's stored inside in very small compartments, and therefore it can't get all together. If you had a lot of acetylene together, you could have a dangerous situation. You simply cannot compress acetylene on its own into a steel cylinder. You cannot put 3/4 of the steel cylinder full of acetone and then increase the push in your acetylene, because it will be under high pressure here, and it's highly dangerous. You have to have your cylinder full with this porous material. It's nearly always a grey material, and it's, as I said, it's like honeycomb. You might get videos there on the YouTube showing you where they cut them up, but it's a porous material, and acetone is filled to about there, and then you pump in the acetylene. Now, the other point about that is, when you have your acetylene cylinder full, you cannot let out the acetylene suddenly. If you just release the whole pressure, you'd cause the acetone to come out with it. So depending on the size of the cylinder, you can only withdraw a certain amount. Now, if you're cutting steel in a shipyard, we'd say, so you have a big ship there and you're cutting it up into pieces, they'd use manifolds, they'd use maybe 8 big cylinders all connected together so that the dissolved acetylene can come out without bringing the acetone and causing it to bubble up. So if you're doing that, you'd need more than one cylinder. For the ordinary fella doing a bit of cutting, the one cylinder is adequate. Now, nowadays, you can get small cylinders, and you can get very small cylinders, but you are restricted in how much of it that you can take out at a time. You want to watch that. If you smell acetone, and you know the smell of it, if you ever smell nail varnish remover, if you smell acetone, you're in trouble. You'll damage your equipment with it, so you need to stop. So you need to know the limitations of your equipment. And some of the little cylinders, and Hobby Weld is a new company that will give you rent-free cylinders. You pay a deposit, and they're very, very useful. And so you can actually have a small set that'll do most of your work, and do it good. Now, some say go for propane. Propane is good. Propane uses more oxygen. For many things, propane is all right too, and an ordinary blow lamp can be very good. We're talking here about where you need very intense heat with a torch to really heat up a piece, and where you might have the problem, whereas some lesser fuels will maybe heat a piece of steel that size. If you have it as part of a casting or part of a machine, you will not be able to heat this part because the heat will run away. So only the acetylene can get the local heat in where it won't escape quick enough, quicker than you can put it in. So for that reason, now I know people will say propane is fairly good, and propane can be very good too. Propane is more of an oxidizing flame, just not as suitable. I wouldn't knock it too much. Now, I think that's the thing. Now, if you leave a cylinder on its side, it will not work right. You must leave it. You must put it up again. So if you have to leave an acetylene cylinder on its side, you need to leave it, in the case of a big cylinder, at least overnight. In the small cylinder, maybe 3 or 4 hours, to allow the acetone to run back down through the porous materials and allow the acetylene to come out at the top where it escapes. There's a little area at the top where it can come out. So that's my little bit on the introduction to acetylene, and a little more about it, and I hope you enjoyed that. I've managed to make it in this bottle. It's now exhausted. There's no more left in it. If I put in more calcium carbide, it'll come out here again. Now the thing is, children used to use this. They used to put it into a box or a bottle like that and put a match to it, and it'd blow the lid off the thing. It was low pressure enough, so I never heard anyone being injured. It's a highly important metal, or sorry, gas, industrial gas. So I hope I've given you some clue. Now remember that it's made from calcium carbide. That's one way. It's also made from oil and gas, a side product of oil and gas, and it just depends. But there's thousands and thousands of tons of calcium carbide made, mostly in China. And it was originally made with the Niagara Falls. Nikola Tesla, he was creating hydropower, and he was creating enough electricity to get the heat required back then in the 20s. So we can read up all about it there yourself. It's not dangerous. Acetylene gas, it's not a health hazard, as I know. It's not. And calcium carbide has a smell of garlic, and so has acetylene. Has a smell of garlic. It's a very distinctive smell. I happen to love that substance. It's a great substance, and I like acetylene too. So you see the soot coming there. If you have an oxyacetylene torch, you'll see the very same soot, and this is what sets it apart as one of the most fantastic engineering and hobby use piece of equipment that you can get. Folks, that's 19 minutes. I know I didn't cover all. I might do another video on it in due course. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I'm glad my little experiment worked. And I better say, don't do this at home, just to be on the safe side. But anyway, I'm used to it. I know how it works. So look at folks, goodbye, and give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We'll see you back for something else. Thank you.